haven't made more of them. I should. I really should. So, a black person sent in some Monero. You seem to have some sympathy for the Third German Empire. Third German Empire. I guess he means the Third Reich. For example, last stream you referenced their polite and reasonable interest in the Danzig corridor. Will you ever explicate your full views on this topic? Well, I mean, I think you could just like read a history book if you want to know. I mean, the point I was making is when you look at any kind of propaganda system, and we were talking about the Russia-Ukraine thing, right? All that Americans know about the issue is that Russia invaded Ukraine. Why did they invade Ukraine? Was there some violence happening before? There was. Was there some issue? Were the Ukrainians doing bad things? Americans have no clue. Because what the propaganda system says is it blots all of that out and says, only look at this thing that makes the Russians look like the big bad villains. Now, does that mean I automatically think the Russians are not villains? I don't know. I don't know about the issue. It actually doesn't concern me at all. I don't care. And in fact, many times there are two people who are in the wrong, right? And so I said the same thing about, World War II. Americans were told the same things about, Hitler. Like Hitler's just invading all these countries for no reason. No, I mean, he annexed Austria, which of course voted to be annexed. Like it was consensual, right? And, Germany and Austria were basically the same culture. And then the portions, and then also people say, oh man, he won part of Czechoslovakia in all these negotiations. Well, it wasn't like some foreign territory. It was a portion of it belonging to, where Germans lived, right? So does this mean that, oh my goodness, now you're saying like, oh, Hitler didn't do nothing? No, but like you can look at these issues and say, oh, clearly I've only seen one side of the story. And maybe I shouldn't get emotional about Ukraine because I don't freaking know anything about it. And I've been deliberately shown only one side of the story. Okay. So, as it comes to Russia and Ukraine or Germany and Poland, I don't know enough about historically what's going on. In fact, I don't even think the history, in terms of something that happened 100 years ago, is necessarily a good representation of what's going on. I don't make that assumption, right? So I don't know. I'm not going to. I can't look at these things, especially issues where that most of it's going to be propaganda. I don't think it's proper for a person to pontificate about them. So what I'm pontificating is ambivalence and skepticism of people who are trying to build ideologies based on these narratives, That doesn't mean like, I'm not actually saying big brain centrism either. I'm just saying when you look at Russia and Ukraine, I know, even if Russia is in a sense an aggressor, I know that what I'm being fed is not the full story. That's what a sensible person should reach. So, not caring about Ukraine is extremely based. There are a bunch of similar wars that people don't care about. And before last month, no one even cared about Ukraine anyways. Yeah, that's exactly right. Like this Ukraine stuff has been going on at least since 2014, and we haven't heard about it because Ukraine is America's ally, right? Or the Ukrainian government that they installed in 2014, right? That is doing bad things, is killing people, right? I saw someone post this meme also where it's like, it just lists out all these conflicts, where like tens or 100,000 thousands of people have died since the 1980s, none of which you ever hear about, right? And then people are just like snoozing throughout the whole thing, and then Ukraine is at the bottom, and there's someone going nuts, right? And that's how it is. Like, there's one thing, I used to have this essay. I almost published a book back in like 2014. That was like way before I had a YouTube channel. But, I made this, one reason you fundamentally can never trust a journalist is because what a journalist, or even like a historian at some level of abstraction, but, what a journalist has is... there's this old saying that Michelangelo, when he created David, the sculpture, or something like that. Someone asked him, oh, how did you make a sculpture that great? And he said, oh, it's easy. You just cut away all the parts that don't look like David, right? So what the media does is they have basically a giant slab of marble. in the sense that going on in the world, there is so much that you can cut any narrative you want from it. Anything you want. Like if you want to create the narrative that the police in America are hunting down and killing black people, you can do that. If you want to create the narrative that black people are hunting down and killing white people, you can do that. Or white people are killing black people. It doesn't matter. Like, you can make these narratives because narratives are formed of anecdotes. Now, this is not me saying like, oh, everything is true or nothing like that. But what I'm saying is, when you're talking about people who control information, they have the ability to take that slab and carve into it anything they want by omission. They omit all the things they don't really care about, and they throw what they want you to see in front of your face all the time. That's how they do it. The media can lie without lying, because what it can do is it can take the complex events of the world and it can focus you in on some that will lead you to false assumptions while ignoring everything else, while ignoring all the contradictory information. And that is what it does. That is exactly what it does. It gets you focused on these particular issues that are disproportionate and they have nothing to do with anything. Okay? They just get you fixed on that and you can't look at anything else. And you fall. This is how they get people. Right? So now everyone has to have an opinion about this Ukraine thing that has nothing to do with them. It has not. Like, I was talking to a relative who had lived in Ukraine for a period. Okay? And she was like, listen, I was there and I still don't freaking know what's going on. It's not my business. I have friends there, but I know this issue of Ukraine versus Russia, I don't know about, and that's correct. She was right to say that. And that's what people need to understand. Like, these things that are put on the news, they are not put on the news to inform you. They are put on the news to be the assumptions that lead you to the conclusions that they want. It's stupid for them to say, you're not allowed to believe this, you have to believe that. Because then people will know they're being brainwashed. But if they put a series of tactical events and other issues in front of your face, they can lead you to make your own decision to say what they want you to think anyway. Right? That's how it works. There's stuff like that. Way back in the day, there was this really good article that was written. It was like, why right-wing activism always fails. Okay, and it's probably still on the internet. It was like in one of those NRX publications. I may have mentioned this in another stream, but the point they make is that fundamentally protests, they're not like the idea that you're told is that a protest, people swell up, they have these ideas, they go out and make a protest, and then they change things. And that is like absolutely nonsense. It's in actually exactly the opposite, right? The people in control, they more or less put on protests. Like in 2020, the media fomented all of these different protests that they wanted. And, even though there was, these lockdowns and crap like that, right? It is like a top-down sanctioned event. So left-wing protests are not like, again, it's not like this public upswelling. It is more or less the system generating these people that are really saying, oh, the system is wrong because it's not taking its own values to its logical conclusion, right? And all of those people who in any of the Antifa protests or whatever, right? All of those guys got off, right? Basically, any criminal actions they did. I mean, there are probably some who went to jail and, for some very brief period, but, when they burnt down buildings, there's ultimately no repercussions, right? And so you can compare that to any kind of anti-lockdown protest or anyone else where that is, it's more like, so when someone on the right, so-called, is doing a protest, they are really kind of fooling themselves, because it's not like, protests are not people changing the world. They are the ruling parties doing kind of a victory dance and like talking about how great they are. That I think is what that article that I alluded to a while ago said. That are controversial. Okay. Whereas the news media, and especially Wikipedia, has now taken it upon themselves to say, these issues, we are not going to say that you're allowed an opinion on them. We're not going to present controversies and things. We are just going to state what we believe in like a totally face-saving way. This is the same kind of thing, the media, of course, since no one believes the media anymore, the news media had to invent this thing called fact checkers. Now, what is a fact checker? It's just it's the same journalist that wrote the lies in the news article. Now they're just writing lies that in like a more, objective tone. But there's a difference between saying something objectively and like actually representing things well. And one of the biggest problems that I think a lot of people have psychologically is they can't distinguish between, someone saying things, as if it's fact, and I'm just going to state my opinions. And I mean, if you can think this, but you're just simply wrong. You just don't know what's going on. People have a lot of problems distinguishing a flat tone that, is really just a way of psychologically, I guess, convincing people that you're just unbiased. You don't have any emotions in the affair. When in reality, I mean, you can just go on Twitter and see what journalists actually think about everything. They're all nuts. They're all crazy. They're all deluded in weird ways.